A while ago, we were informed that our beloved son no longer walks this earth.
The UK government could have done a lot more to help Alan Henning and to bring him back.
One American and one Briton each meet a similar tragic fate. ISIL terrorists recently beheaded U.S. aid worker Peter Kassig and British aid worker Alan Henning. That's just two of the several hostages killed by ISIL since August. Their cases and others have reignited the debate over whether governments should pay ransoms to win the release of their citizens. We'll consider this. Governments and families pay more than $1 billion in ransoms per year. That's according to the tracking website Havoc Scope. The average ransom paid in 2012 was about $2 million. And while all the focus is on ISIL terrorists, the top country for kidnappings by ransom is Mexico. Hostage-taking is proving to be lucrative for terror groups from the Americas to the Middle East to places in Africa like Somalia. All this has led to a review of U.S. policy over how it reacts to hostage-takers and their captives. CCTV's Nathan King has insight.
James Foley, Stephen Sotloff, and Peter Kasich, all Americans beheaded by Islamic fighters. But then there are the luckier ones. Peter Theo Curtis, freed by his Islamic captors after the intervention of Qatar, and Bo Bergdahl, a U.S. soldier swapped in Afghanistan for Taliban prisoners.
The courage that people would have to fight oppression and try to make the world a better place.
For families reunited, relief. For those whose loved one was killed, anguish. And, as is the case of the Foley family, frustration at the U.S. government. They felt it kept them out of the loop when it came to efforts to free their son. The Foley family found out about their son's death from a journalist and say no one in the U.S. government reached out to them. But Bergdahl's family say they were closely involved in negotiations.
There's a very different way in which families of hostages are treated, and that certainly doesn't make those families who feel like they're on the outside looking in happy. There's a lot of different areas for reform. There's a lot of different areas for critiquing the policy.
But in announcing the review of its hostage policy, the White House says one reform is off the table, paying ransoms.
It's not in the best interest of American citizens to pay ransoms to any organization, let alone a terrorist organization, that is holding an American hostage. And the reason for that is simple. We don't want to put other American citizens at even greater risk when they're around the globe.
But others are paying. While European governments like France deny it, research suggests otherwise. An in-depth study by the New York Times chronicled ransoms collected by terrorist groups since 2008. Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb received $91.5 million from ransoms. Nearly $30 million went to Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, and more than $5 million to Somalia-based terror group Al-Shabaab. Dorothy Moizan is the author of Ransom, a look into the business of hostage-taking. She says while governments deny it, there is evidence they have paid ransoms in the past.
French president, of course, he can't say the truth. He can't say France has paid a ransom. Maybe France has paid a ransom, maybe not.
That has led some experts to conclude that there needs to be a more open conversation between the US and Europe over ransom payments and their effect on the market for hostages.
Obviously, the administration doesn't like Europeans shelling out all this money. It's directly financing these groups, a lot of which are the worst of the worst. In addition to that, it's creating a market for hostages. The fact that these massive payments are being made gives them a huge financial incentive to further kidnap Westerners.
This important debate over ransoms aside for a second, there are practical steps the US policy review on hostages may take. Those include a closer coordination between US government departments, a better communication with the families of those being held. There's even talk of creating a hostage task force that would handle each crisis. And while the fate of many US hostages may differ, many believe a clearer approach to dealing with their families and the captives is needed as more and more hostages are being held in Mexico, in Syria, Iraq, and elsewhere, Assia.
So, Nathan, U.S. would say they never pay ransom. Is that true?
They are adamant, along with the British, that they never pay ransoms. But there is a grey area here. For example, when Qatar became involved in a recent case, did they pay a ransom if you go through a middleman? And then there are all these other smaller hostage cases, for example, in Nigeria, in the oil areas, where companies get involved. Do they pay ransoms? That is a big question. Now, the US is, of course, is against the law to do this. They actually go after people who try and do this. But do they catch everyone? So not having this debate in the open, not having a debate with European and other allies who may pay ransoms as well, means the market won't go away. So even though they're doing this review, there's a lot more to be done.
All right, CCTV's Nathan King, thank you so much.
Thank you, Essie.